Today I'm going to be reviewing the Nocturne expansion to Dominion. How these reviews work, go through some of the mechanics, some of the components that are common across a bunch of different expansions. Look at the extremes of the set, high end, low end, both, what are the most powerful and what are the most fun cards, and maybe on the least side too. A little bit of fluff at the end, and for each of these things I give a letter grade and you can weight them at the end. So, context for Nocturne. Nocturne was the 11th expansion, the third of the modern era, call it, after Adventures and Empires. It was released in November 2017. It was definitely a contrast to those, whereas Adventures and Empires maybe made things a little bit easier. Nocturne probably made things a little bit more difficult, which is not the worst thing ever. Has 33 Kingdom cards in it, so a pretty big expansion in that's end. And it has a whole bunch of cards that are not looking at Kingdom cards. There's these 7 heirlooms, one set per player, to, this new mechanic of heirlooms. There's definitely an emphasis on non-supply cards in the set, previously seen in Dark Ages mostly. There's 5 non-supply piles of cards, along with 3 zombies, which I'm putting in there. There's also this Fate and Doom mechanic, which is going to give you your 12 boons and 12 hexes, and also actually 4 of your states. And then the last thing is kind of, we'll call it the namesake of Nocturne, is this night phase and night. So we'll start with that namesake mechanic and talk about night phase and night. So there's these cards. They have a different color. They're dark, and they're night cards. They have this type night, and what that's going to tell you is that you can play this during your night phase, which is a new phase which exists between your buy phase and your cleanup. And so, all the things that happen throughout the turn, you can get all your actions in play, you get all your treasures in play, you make your buys, and then these things happen. And there's a couple different ways that these take advantage of that. Crypt looks at treasures that you have in play, so you had to play all your treasures before Crypt comes out. Some of these are gained directly to your hand, so otherwise gaining directly to your hand's useless. In this case, it means that you can play your Den of Sin because you have your night phase afterwards. Monastery, Devil's Workshop are going to count the number of gains that you've made, and so by being after the buy phase, that allows them to count your buys too. All of these things tend to be pretty cool things happening. They're fun cards to play with. The other thing is there's no concept of actions on these. You can just draw up a bunch of knights and whoosh, play them all out there, which I'm always a big fan of. Playing cards is where it's at in Dominion. So I do really like the night phase mechanic, and for that I'm giving this an A. There's nothing bad about it. Alright, talking about Fate and Doom, I'm going to start with what's a boon, what's a hex. Fate cards are going to give you boons. Boons are little positive things, +1 card, gain a silver, trash a card. These are all little positive things that a card can give you. Hexes, on the other hand, are the opposite. They're negatives. Gain a copper onto your deck. Some of them come with states. If you don't have Deluded or Envious, take Envious. Envious is a state that then sits in front of you, and then at the start of your next buy phase, you return it, and silver and gold only make 1 coin. So, Envious is this negative thing that's going to make it so your silver and gold don't make a whole lot. Looking at some of the cards that do these, you can see your Fate type on here that's going to give out boons. There's simple ones, receive a boon. Maybe you look through the boons on gain. You're going to put out 3 boons for Druid, and maybe you get to pick among them. These do come up randomly, which, is theoretically frustrating, but I don't think is actually that big a deal because most of them are small. There's a couple games where you're really, really after the ones that gain, but, it's random enough and those are infrequent enough that you don't really feel, so bad about it. You can always go back around and get it yourself. These things do shuffle, so, you miss one the first time, maybe you'll get it the second. Hexes, clearly if they're negative, sometimes you'll want to attack with them. That's what Skulk and this Night Card Vampire do. They give out hexes, bad things for your opponent. You can also have them as be like a drawback. Leprechaun requires you to do something really interesting. Otherwise, you're going to receive a hex. Cursed Village is a really powerful card, and when you gain it, you receive a hex as a drawback. So, these are all good things to be doing. They're pretty fun to get to see what's going to happen next, tension wise. But ultimately, even though they have these random elements, they don't really dominate games with their randomness. So that's kind of a fun thing there. The one criticism is particularly on the hexes. It says you have all of this text to read on a card. Each other player receives the next hex. And then you go back and you think like, gosh, envy. Here's another sentence to read. Envious. Here's another sentence to read. And so it can be a lot to go through to figure out, what's happening. And so, that's definitely a drawback here, where, although it's a fun concept, there is mechanically like this, thing that you have to go through to actually figure out what's going on. And so, for that reason, I'm dinging it down to an A-. Alright, non-supply cards. Nocturne has a bunch of non-supply cards on this very disorganized slide. Here the non-supply cards are Wish, they're Bat, they're these zombies, and then there's Wisp, Imp, and Ghost, which are the spirits. Non-supply cards, of course, have things that are in the supply that let you gain them, or in the case of these zombies, use them in Necromancer. Necromancer, these zombies actually start in the trash, and Necromancer plays stuff out of the trash, so whether it's one of these zombies or something else that gets trashed. Wish, very powerful. You have to go through hoops to get it to them. Bat makes it so that Vampire Bat is like this alternating thing. You get to have Vampire exchanges for Bat exchanges for Vampire, so you get this alternating thing without use of a journey token from Adventures. So that's kind of interesting. You get a lot more text on this one. It doesn't say journey token on it. You have these spirits, particularly these are draw things, and so these are kind of interesting to go through this, mechanism where you have to maybe get your Exorcist, do something with your Exorcist to get this, and only then can you draw. And so that's something that I like. I mean, I'm always a fan of these things where you have to take extra steps to do something seemingly simple. It feels like, this is a way that I get to express my Dominion skill, is like, if something's a little bit more difficult to get to, it takes more effort. It's more good, to do it. That said, this is a little bit of a mess. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 really, non-supply cards, and, we can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, things that are granting them. So that is not a great ratio. I'm gonna be real. Like you have a lot of these like kind of one-offs, where, you have this non-supply card, but it's not really maybe made the greatest use of. And so, for that reason, I'm dinging this one down to an A-. Alright, heirlooms. What's an heirloom? An heirloom is a thing, it's a treasure, that is going to replace one of your starting coppers, and they replace the starting coppers when the card, that they live with is, cemetery here says heirloom haunted mirror, and here's haunted mirror, when this card is in the kingdom. And so, for various reasons, they may or may not kind of be associated with the card they are. Haunted Mirror has a trigger on trash. Cemetery trashes cards. Pasture is a victory card. Shepherd discards victory cards. Some of them are a lot less connected. Lucky Coin and Fool. Like what's going on here? Fool has nothing to do with Lucky Coin. Maybe similarly with Pixie and Goat. So it's variable. The thing that I like about these is that they do add a lot of diversity to your early play. Like a lot of them have these mini games. Haunted Mirror you want to trash. Magic Lamp you want to get 6 differently named cards, or 6 cards that you have at least exactly one copy of, and play out in order to do that. Otherwise, Goat's going to speed stuff up. Cursed Gold's going to mess with you. Whatever it is, these really do make the games feel very, very different. Just to have either this starting differing effect or this mini game that you have to play. And for that reason, I'm giving these a solid A. They're really fun to either deal with or work with if you can. Alright, looking at some of our components, starting with the attacks. All but one of the attacks in Nocturne, there's 5 of them, all but one of the attacks, that is these 4, are things that say each other player receives the next hex. That's not a whole lot of diversity as much as I love the giving out hexes to my opponents, especially in high quantity. That's definitely a criticism. And then Raider, the one that doesn't say give the next hex, is very, very bad. It's like not a good card at all. It doesn't really attack, and so, you know, this would be something that you're not really seeing a good diversity here, although hexes do give a diversity of attacks. Really, all of these are about equivalent feeling, attack-wise, and so, you know, it's not good. I'm going to give it a little bit of bonus just because I do love the hex attacking and bring it up to a C+. Draw pieces. Draw, we are usually looking for quantity. Quality is kind of secondary. Nocturne does have pretty high quality in its draw pieces. You know, we talked about the spirits being this mechanical thing where, you know, you had to go through steps to do this thing that you would otherwise do. You know, this Ghost Town Den of Sin can supply you with village or draw on your next turn if you so need it. Some nice villages, particularly Cursed Village is a lot of fun. Shepherd is a lot of fun. You know, you get to deal with your victory cards and turn them into giant hand sizes. And then some of these terminal draw cards, and maybe not the most exciting, although Tragic Hero is pretty exciting. Puka can be pretty exciting altogether. But, you know, you count them up. It's 4, 2, 10, maybe like 3.5 cards give these. 13.5 out of 33 is not the greatest. Give it a little bit of a bonus for, you know, these being fun to work with, but it's an A- at best. Alright, payload. Cool things that you can do with your deck in Nocturne. There's actually not a whole lot there. You know, this is mostly just treasure gaining. Really, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 2 boons that I have here. These are all things that are doing treasure gaining. Whether it's Skulk, you can get a gold for cheap. Tragic Hero is pretty compelling. You can, you know, play this, and if you have enough cards, it turns into a treasure, essentially. Leprechaun is something that, you know, you have to do a lot of work, and then you'll gain a gold with it no matter what. But you'd really like to get this wish rather than give yourself a hex, and in that case, it can also be a pretty sweet gainer. There's Sacred Grove as a coins buy thing, but, you know, overall, not the most exciting payloads. Just a lot of different ways to produce coins. This is part of probably Nocturne is a little bit of a difficult set, is because, you know, there's not really a way to go really explosive. Tragic Hero does that a little bit. Leprechaun can do that a little bit, but, you know, it's a lot of work, and so we're giving this one a C+. Alright, extremes. Let's look at the high-end strength. Vampire, Shepherd, probably the 2 best cards in the expansion. You know, these are fine. They're nothing like, you know, it's kind of this gainer trasher, and it's a draw card. Like, ultimately, these are not things that are really standing out. They do give, you know, very different looking games. Like, you don't go, oh man, it's a vampire game, this is exactly what I do. It's a shepherd game, this is exactly what I do. But they're not really, you know, overly exciting, as these really strong cards. And so, it's kind of maybe average with a little bit of plus, just because, you know, shepherd is so fun to do work with. So we'll call it a B+. Low end strength. You know, we said earlier, Raider is like unbuyably useless, and so, that's definitely a failure on that one. The next worst card is going to be Fool. This is one where there's this state called Lost in the Woods that has something to do with boons that you haven't seen, but it's not particularly good. It does sometimes get bought, but it's nothing to, like, you know, write the folks about that this is the second worst card in Nocturne. So, you know, a failure, a not very good one. That's going to be a C- from here. Most exciting card is Exorcist. You know, we talked about the mechanism of you have to do stuff to get your draw in spirits, and Exorcist is like the poster child for this. In fact, you can get any of the spirits, you know. We looked at it. Go back here. Wisp, Imp, Ghost, like these two draw. This one's a village and also a little bit of draw. So, you get one of these spirits that'll help you draw, and you have to trash a card from your hand to do it. So Estate easily goes into Wisp, but then you start to look at, gosh, I want Imps, it has to start being silver, and if you really want Ghost, it has to be something that's costing 5 or more. And so you really, really do have to work for your draw with Exorcist, and mechanically that's a great thing to be doing. And so this one's an A for me. Most unpleasant, it's Raider. We talked about how it's unbuyably bad. There's not a whole lot to criticize in the set, and so, this thing that just sits there doing nothing, you can't say that it's like really bad and really unpleasant, but, it is sitting there doing nothing, and so this is still a B. Alright, theme. Nocturne has fantastic theme. You look through it, like there's the night stuff, really everything fits in, so this one's an A. Artwork, again, fantastic throughout the set. There's a couple of things that are a little bit questionable for other reasons, but like you just look at the boons and the hexes, and those alone just make it, so that's an A. And vibe, Nocturne makes things difficult. You have to express your Dominion skill in it, and so that's a real positive for me. That's an A. Put it all together, you get a weighted average of 3.48. Nocturne is one of the better expansions, one of the best expansions in Dominion. It can be a little bit difficult to get going, especially with new players. We talked about the hexes where it's like, gosh, I have to read this, then I have to read this, then I have to read this, but it's definitely rewarding for what it does once you get it going. And so if you're deciding whether you want to be buying Nocturne, I have to say the answer is yes. Like this is one of the best expansions. You should buy it.